I was brought here to win championships, but the thing I'm proudest of has been the consistency. I look back on year one, and this was in 2016, as a failure and not the standard. But every year after that, we've been right there. That was Kirby Smart in an interview with ESPN. It was a really good question and answer. Probably didn't take very long to do, but I thought it shed a lot of light into his thinking, and I was surprised by that. Not the part about I was brought here to win championships, which I don't think there's any question about that part. It was that he looks back on the first season as a failure. Part of me wonders why. Um, Everything. This is a little bit complex, I guess. Everything is not going to be successful right out of the gate, and I think learning is not always failure. In terms of a black and white, was the 2016 season a success or a failure? It was a failure. Yes, that's the easiest way to put it. I think he categorized or he further defines it by saying and not the standard. Um, that was such a. I'm going to talk about the 16 season real quick because I think when you look back at 16 and you think about where Georgia had been, really let's just say the three seasons before that, 13, 14, and 15, and the three seasons after 16, 17, 18, 19, you really could not compare the two. In 13, 14, 15, a coach had been let go. They did not play in a major bowl game. And, well, they did not win the East. They did not play in a major bowl game, and their coach was let go. The three seasons after that, they they won the East three times in a row. They won the Rose Bowl. They won the Sugar Bowl, and they won. And they played for a national championship. Obviously, their coach was not let go. So when you compare the if 16 is the meat between the very large sandwich bread there, those are not at all the same thing. And make no mistake about it, Kirby was brought to Georgia to win national championships, which he did. Okay. By the way, we just got a bunch of these in. Well, we got a bunch. Red Zone, our friends at Red Zone down there, they've got a lot of them in. Okay. So if you're going to Georgia for G Day, go by Red Zone. Say hi to Scott and Mindy. Leave your drinks at the table. They don't let drinks and liquid into the store, which makes sense. If you want double dogs, you can go to Red Zone, or you can pick a very limited number that I have down below. There's a link down below. But and Scott and Mindy were in business in 16, and I remember that time very well. I was there for it. You know, Georgia did not have an established quarterback coming into 16. Nick Chubb was coming off of a major knee injury. It had a brand new head coach for the first time in 15 seasons, an unproven head coach as it relates to being the head person. And there was not enough support for the program the way that it needed to be in order to win. In a big way? No, that was not there. So there was a lot of what had to happen in 2017 and beyond. It was not ready to happen in 2016. They didn't have everything they needed to win in a major way. They had the staff. They did not have all the players. They did not have the most important player with any experience at all at quarterback. And it was not an older bunch. But that's getting away from the point. I don't know that 16 was a failure unequivocally, and he may not have meant that there, but that's a harsh way of looking at the 2016 season, and I think that there's so much little stuff happened in 16 when you think about they didn't have the traditional practice fields. They had to practice out near the softball and soccer complex. Georgia. So they were busing to and from class. It took us. We were bussed out there too. It took us about, I think it was 15 to 20 minutes to go and then come back, it was 15 or 20 more minutes. So you're losing not quite an hour driving there, whereas and it was just discombobulated. That was in the spring, that was in the fall, if my memory serves correct. It was just there was a lot of wasted time and motion, but all of that, and the other thing too, and the person that told me this, I trust them completely. They would know that Kirby that first year came in and did everything the way that, in many ways, that Georgia had set up over time, and not that that was a failing way to do it, but he absorbed a lot of what was suggested, and then a season later, basically, I wouldn't say a light switch, but basically said, listen, I know how to do this, and I'm going to do it this particular way, and that's what's worked. Now, what went along with that? More money, not just for him, but for the staff, and for recruiting, and for events, and for when you think about where Georgia is at and coming into this 24 season. There have been, I do not recall, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, considering my history being covering the program. I cannot recall a time where there's been so much construction as it relates to football. Whether you're talking about the completion of indoor, a brand new recruiting facility that's underneath the bridge at Sanford Stadium. Now you've got they're moving the press box. Why are they moving the press box? So you can have essentially an area at the 50, well, anywhere from the 30 to the 30 area in midfield, the best absolute place to visibly see the game. They're using that for boosters. Where is when you think about the change of what's going on at track, with the track being all of that stuff. That was all set up along the way. You couldn't just snap your fingers and get to where Georgia's got right now. And it took a person who had vision. Kirby Smart has always had vision. Like, I remember a lot of people really disliking him, probably because he was working in Alabama, because of, and his recruiting prowess. But they were very dismissive that he would be able to have success. I was not, but he just had to make happen his vision, and the people at Georgia, and Jerry Moorhead, etc. There was skepticism that why are we spending like this much money on this stuff, and people who I wouldn't say knew better, but people who had been around the block a little bit were like, hey, if you're not going to do it right, you're not going to have success. And I think that 17 changed everything. Do you have 17 without 16? You might. You might. I mean, it is possible that you have to think about, Georgia in 16, they won a relative. It wasn't that close against North Carolina, but they won on the last play of the game against Missouri, basically. They lost on the last play of the game to Vanderbilt, to Georgia Tech, and to Tennessee. All three of those losses were on the last play of the game. You could say they won on the last play of the game against Auburn because that's technically what happened. So they had a lot of really tight games in 16 that kind of could have gone either way. They went 8-5. In 17, games didn't go either way. They were all blowouts except Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Now, I'm going off the top of my head here. So all the rest of them, they either lost in a decisive fashion against Auburn, or they won in decisive fashion, which was, the other Auburn game and every other game. I remember in 17, if you didn't get the photo by the half, you weren't getting it. Period. South Carolina was actually the one normal game in 17 where no one just ran everybody over. But 17 against Florida, I knew that was bad from the start. I thought they might get up, 28-0. I think they only got 21-0, but it was dirty. And Tennessee, they won 41-0. Vanderbilt, I can't remember that game, but it wasn't close or competitive. So I do remember that game. Jacob Eason getting hit, and there was a fumble at the end of it. That was a total blowout, that game. So there was a lot. The 16 season, I think, was a massive learning curve for a lot of people, including Kirby, by the way. And so when he categorizes it as a, quote, failure and not the standard, it was not the standard at all. But I have to tell you, and I would, the press conferences are not where we get to, have a conversation with Kirby. Those are questions and answers, and that's it. But if I would say this, that was not a failure in 16. That was a setup for everything moving forward, because he made a lot of mistakes as a head coach in 16. Think about the halftime of the South Carolina game where the clock ran out. I mean, I don't know if that was on Jacob or Kirby, but it looked like it was on Kirby. When you think about just the way certain things were dealt with or handled, all of that stuff, he didn't have all the apparatus in place either to make everything go the right way. So I think for me, I would not call it a failure as much as a massive learning opportunity, and he took advantage of it. And Georgia would not be where it's at had they not had that first, I would say, almost 18 months. So that was December 15 until July 17. If they didn't have that time for Nick to get completely healthy, for the you remember the coaching staff changed going into 17. I don't think people necessarily remember that part, but it did. And I'm trying to remember some of the details of all of that, but that changed too. Yeah, I mean, he fired the defensive line coach and went to Trey Scott. Well, that's worked out pretty well. I mean, so and that at that moment was looked at as what is Kirby doing? No, he knew exactly what he was doing. And do you get that in 16? And maybe he had to have Tracy Rocker in 16. Maybe it was kind of said to him, hey, he's got a contract for 2 years. He's a really good coach. He might not be your coach, but and I mean, that may have been what happened. I have to say, I don't know, but there were a lot of things in that time that 16 was not, as it relates to the results, they were not what they have. Georgia's not, I think they've won that in one season. They lost 5 games, and since then they lost 11, if my math is right. So that's not at all the same. One is not at all like the other. I mean, one season versus the other 7, not at all the same. But I saw that and I thought, this is not quite the way I would view it. But that's me and he's him.